Well, Ashton, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Glad to be here.
Appreciate you joining us for what we've kind of started as the AskAlliance. I call it the fireside chat,
Okay.
although we don't have a
fire here.
going. Yeah, we need to though. It'd be nice if the weather would get that way.
Yeah.
But appreciate you coming in.
You bet.
Appreciate
Glad
you coming
to be
in.
here.
Just not that we have any ground rules, but one of the great things about this exercise that we've learned is the more free-flowing it is,
Yep.
and the more candid the conversation, which you and I definitely won't have a problem with, obviously, knowing each other as well as we do. We just kind of let this go where it goes.
Glad to do it. Glad to be a resource or answer any questions you have.
Well, good deal. Well, there won't be a whole lot of questions other than just tell us a lot about yourself, because you have a lot to say, I think.
Sometimes.
I was just fascinated in going through, knowing your background.
Yep.
But it's been a while since I kind of went back and looked. And so I just listed all the things
Okay.
that you had on your website and the real estate website. And realtor,
Yep.
public speaker, podcaster, writer, artist, musician, poet.
Yep.
I'll really have to ask you about this one. Amateur cosmologist. And family man. You didn't
There you
put
go.
family man on it, but that's a given.
They need
That's
to
a
be.
given.
We need to reorder.
Yeah,
those.
yeah. Those were no specific order whatsoever. But what
Yeah.
was more fascinating was the fact that you put in there, and currently in pursuit of more things to become.
Yeah. Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, not only what does that mean, but where do you find the time?
Great question. I mean, sometimes when I hear the list of things I have going on, I go, man, I do have a lot going on. But, I've really just found recently in these last 5, 6, 7 years a zest for life. My 20s were an interesting time for me, building companies and all sorts of different things. And then I kind of had my crash and burn moment, if you will, of where everything kind of had to get realigned. And when that moment happened for me, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as a business owner, had a lot of shifts, and it was just a great clarifying moment for me as I entered my 30s. And from there, I've really reset all of these business entities that I'm a part of, how I approach being a dad, how I approach being a father or a husband. And so, how do I do all that stuff? I just think, I always say this phrase, work expands to fit the time allowed. And I think sometimes people think that certain things should take 5, 6 hours, and I've just found that certain things can take a half an hour each day.
Absolutely.
And I did not coin that phrase. Jay Papasan coined that phrase, the author of The One Thing. But I really think that I'm just crazy interested about a lot of things in life. I'm an avid reader, and so I just love, kind of turning the page every day and being in a place to where I feel as though I made a step in my progression of becoming a better human and a better business owner and all those things. So,
Sure. Well, it's just always baffled me the topics that we'll come up with just over lunch meetings, whether it's talking about specific real estate deals.
Yep.
That's obviously how you and I got to know each other.
Yep.
But give me a little bit of background again to refresh my memory. Born and raised where? How'd you get to Waco?
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in Wichita Falls, Texas. Came to Baylor University in the fall of 2001. Graduated in the spring of 2005. Didn't really have any idea what I was going to do. Had a marketing degree. Had really long hair. Thought about being a hippie and moving to San Francisco. And basically started kind of interviewing in all different industries. My grandfather and grandmother had a real estate brokerage in Wichita Falls, and they said, well, hey, while you're figuring all this out, why don't you come by our office and you can run some errands for us. So I don't think I've been awake before 9 a.m. in 4 years. I shotgunned a Red Bull, ironed some khakis, and walked in with my hair going every which way. And that day they were like, here, go put out some sold signs for us. And so for about 30 days I was I called myself the VP of the Sold Rider Sign Division. And quickly started piecing things together, saw the business was kind of getting an understanding of how things worked. Next thing I knew, got a real estate license and learned some really hard lessons those first 6 to 12 months. But on the other side of that, moved into the business, and about 5-6 years after having an active license, was able to become a partner with them.
I see.
And then probably around that time, we were coming back and forth to Waco, going to football games, and had some family here, and I was like, man, we're spending a lot of time in Waco. And my business mind turned on, and I was like, why don't we open an office here? And so I rented a little office space on Austin Avenue, and I think it was $500 a month. Got my mother-in-law and my aunt-in-law and one of their friends. They somehow, some way said, yeah, we'll join you in this thing. They really are responsible for our company being what it is today. And
now, did they already have their?
they didn't. So they were getting, when I kind of had this idea, they were like, well, we'll get our license. And so they did that. And then probably about 2 years ago or so, I started seeing some market shifts. I really study the data a lot. I'm
Absolutely.
super plugged into the numbers. And I started kind of going, man, I may need to invest more time in another place. More than what I was doing here. And so we really started having conversations within our house about where do we want to plant for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And geographically, I loved Waco. I loved being in the heart of Texas. I'm bullish on the Waco story. And so it just seemed like a fit to go, why don't we flip this a little bit? And so we made that move about 18 months ago. I still am in Wichita Falls, very active there. But I'm more present here than I used to be.
Yeah.
So we call this home base now, still there a lot. And so I'm kind of figuring out what it looks like to have a couple real estate companies. But we really love Waco, love calling it home, and I think the story here is going to be really awesome, especially from the real estate perspective for the next 20 years.
And as a banker, we feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
We've got a really unique backstory. But so tell me a little bit. Was your entire family Baylor graduates? What brought you from Wichita Falls, which has Midwestern State?
Yeah, I had MSU. No, my mom went to SMU. My dad went to MSU. I crossed paths with a guy probably around my freshman year of high school, and he was coming back to Wichita Falls, and he would kind of lead some group stuff that we would have at church. I was just like, I kind of want to be like that guy. That was all I knew about Baylor, was that this is where he went, and if that's what I need to become one day and do, then that's what I'm going to do. So I was pretty dead set on Baylor even before I set foot on campus. And so came here, one of my best friends from Wichita Falls. We were roommates all 4 years, and loved my time at Baylor, and it was a huge draw for us coming back here as
Absolutely. Well, and you being in the real estate market, as you know, there's lots of opportunities still left to uncover, but it's harder and harder to find.
Yeah. Oh, it is. I mean, it's the market today is, especially commercially, super seller friendly. It is residentially too, to a degree. So we're, that's another one of my worlds, and we'll probably get there talking about that. But we're all in all, I tell people this all the time. I don't really care what you buy. I think if you're playing the long game, you will be very happy you did it 20 years from today.
Yeah.
So it's really, and really that's one of my core business philosophies is we always play the long game. We're not in and out. I always say truth is greater than trends. I'm not so interested in the trends. I'm interested in the truth of all things.
Sure.
And great locations over time tend to stay great locations. Very rarely do they flip-flop on that.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of what we believe, and everyone that does business with us, that's a lot of what we're sharing today is, hey, play the long game, you'll be just fine.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons that you've been so helpful to us, especially as bankers, the monthly information you provide to us, which is publicly available, anybody can do it, but the way you package it up and send it out, we share it with our board, we share it with several folks within our organization, and it's some of the most insightful pieces of information that allows us to see trends that normally we've got to dig through multiple reams of research and all this other additional information provided from various sources. So while we obviously know you've got significant experience in the real estate business, I love the story about how it even came to be that you and I met, and how it all started with a referral from a banker in Wichita Falls.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about what your relationship was with that banker in Wichita Falls.
Yeah, well, they're, so the president of what was Fidelity Bank, Tommy's a dear family friend of ours. He's been a great mentor to me, to my dad. We've done business with him, and really he's kind of moved around with different banks and started Fidelity from scratch. Eventually my dad became a board member. A lot of families that we knew had stock in that bank, and so we just he's one of those guys where once a week you need to call him and you're going to learn a whole lot when you talk to him. And so somehow, some way, I think we got copied on an email, probably 18 months ago or so, and said, you guys need to connect somehow. And I know that you guys partner with them in some things at times. And so it's good to know who to trust in the marketplace.
Well, and I didn't realize it till just recently after a lunch you and Todd and I had together that Todd's relationship with Tommy goes way back.
Yeah, many years.
Yeah, many years, and so far back that the model that we built this bank on was a model that Tommy said, this is a model you should really look at. And it's obviously done tremendously well for Alliance. But one of the things that it really supports, and I think you talk about it in one of your podcasts, I can't remember specifically which one, but the value of relationships.
Yeah.
And just how you can't put a dollar value on it.
That's right.
Not that you would ever want to, but just the value in relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same in real estate.
Yeah.
It's the same in banking. It's the same pretty much in business, especially in a community like Waco, Wichita Falls. But you even start to see it in the larger metropolitan areas as well. Yeah. No matter where you go, relationships are important.
No doubt.
So tell me about how you got into podcasting.
Man, that's another crazy story.
First of all, tell everybody the name of the podcast.
Yeah, so the podcast is called Good, True, and Beautiful, which for some of us may sound a little too metaphorical and too soft or gushy or something like that. Trust me, there's been a lot of really interesting voices that have joined us on this. I mean, I think over 20 New York Times bestsellers, pastors, artists, 3-star Michelin chefs, people that inspire me, random stories that I hear, a 103-year-old man that won the 100-meter Old Man Olympics or whatever. Like I've just had so many different people come on. So I started reading in 2009. I was never a reader. At college, it annoyed me that we had to read. I read a book called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years by Donald Miller, and it just blew me up in a million pieces. And that was the moment where I was like, I need to be on this path of wisdom. I'm not so much interested in information as much as I am interested in wisdom. And so I started uncovering all different voices, business voices, philosophy voices, leadership voices. And, I was in Wichita Falls, Texas, and I didn't really have a lot of people to talk about this stuff with. I would lean over to my wife and read this page at night, and I was like, isn't that amazing? And she's like, I guess so. And I was like, well, you know what? We're not talking about this, so I'm calling the author tomorrow. And I kind of just found out the way to ask and get into the front door of some of these guys. And one by one, they started to say yes. And it's turned into a deal where 20,000 people a week right now are listening to this thing. And really? There is no financial gain. I've never tried to sell something on it. It's my sandbox. It's my little playland. It doesn't have to make money, which feels really good. And it's just become this really interesting place where there's not a lot of rules. I never know kind of where some of the conversations are going, but some amazing people have come on board. And I think what it's done for me, especially in Waco, is introduce people to the Ashton that's just more than trying to be a real estate agent, trying to be a real estate broker. We've got goals and we want to grow and we want the graph to move up and to the right. Sure. But at the end of the day, too, I also know that there's got to be some joy, some zest, some peace, some love in what you do. And really, that's been the basis of all these conversations that I've had. So it's a lot of fun. It depends on the season. Like recently, I've been a little bit out of sync posting Typically try to have something out once a week, but some fun stuff's on the horizon for 2020, and it's fun. I invite anyone that watches this, there's all sorts of things that you can listen to there.
Absolutely, there really is. I've been amazed at especially some of the New York Times bestsellers that you're listening to it, and I'm sitting there across from my desk going, well, I know Ashton. and he's talking to a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah.
And the fact that I know from having conversations with you that just started from a phone call.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the smell test that a lot of these guys have right now is really good. And so you kind of have to just show up and ask, hey, that book, it made this change in my life, and it's made this change in my business, made this change in my marriage. And that's what those guys want to hear.
Yeah.
Because they're not getting paid to come on my podcast, but at the end of the day, it's just been such a fun little niche for me to have in the world, and I think it'll be my life's work one day. I don't know how or where it's going to go, but I truly believe that whatever that is, that's what all these other businesses and entities are pointing towards.
Tell me a little bit about the book that you read that kind of changed everything. The
Yeah,
whole
so-
dynamic.
So Donald Miller, it's about story. It's about not looking at your life so much as a career, but actually looking at your life as a story. And he has this sentence in there that he says, in a story, there's a protagonist. And the protagonist is the one that overcomes conflict to get what he wants. He knows what he wants, and he overcomes conflict to get it. And so he really just breaks down all of the different dimensions of story, what it means to live a good story. And so much so, I named my first daughter Story.
Really?
So I read that book, and I was like, her name will be Story. Because that's what we all want, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not going to retire with a bunch of sold writers in my garage and look at them. I'm going to bring stories with me. There will be something at the end of all of our careers that we look back on and we want to reflect, and I've always said this, we want to be able to say, I'm glad I did, in lieu of saying, I wish I had.
Yeah.
And I think that's, sometimes we don't know how to put our thumb on that, but that's what you're doing up here every day. It's what I'm doing every day out in Woodway. It's a story that you want to live, and so that's kind of the essence of that book, and he introduced me to all sorts of different voices in the world, but I would recommend that book to anybody. It's amazing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that background,
Yeah.
that it was just one kind of pivotal moment.
It was
One pivotal
Chicago,
book.
Illinois, in a cold February. I
So
took
you
that
remember
book
the
with
date,
me.
the time?
February, and I remember just couldn't quit turning the pages, and you don't go outside in Chicago.
Well, I was fixing to ask, why were you in Chicago?
Because I got a great rate on the
Okay.
nicest hotel
There
in
you
all
go.
places, because no one goes there in
There you go.
February.
There you
And
go.
just powered through that book in a weekend, and probably given away 100 copies. It's been a significant thing in our
Yeah, I
lives.
think once you find books like that, I've got a few, they're more business related. And I'm very much like you were, and I still continue to be that way today, back in college, where I don't like to read,
Yeah.
but every now and then I'll find something that I'll really dig
Yeah.
into. But I will say the shorter the better.
Yeah.
The quicker they can
Yeah,
get
yeah,
to the point,
yeah.
and they can really give me the soup to nuts very quickly,
Yeah.
the more I'm a fan of. I'm a big fan of the Powell principles, General Colin Powell.
No doubt.
And so it's always interesting to hear that. So going through some of these other,
Yeah.
I gotta ask because
Yeah.
I don't want to run out of time. Amateur cosmology.
Yeah, that is a fancy philosophical way to just ask the big questions of who are we and where are we going.
I got
And so I've been involved with a lot of some super interesting philosophical minds. Father Richard Rohr from out of New Mexico, he has a place called the Center for Action and Contemplation. And so I've studied these minds, and they're asking those big random questions. And they are random, but make no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, it's really just kind of wondering what's it mean to be human.
Yeah.
And I think we're all asking that question, and it's an interesting time to be human.
It's a very interesting time to be human, to say the least. One of the things that my wife and I have actually had lots of conversations about, and it goes back to your story and your physical story that lives in your home. But we've got twin 11-year-old girls.
Mm-hmm.
And so for their birthday, what do you get them?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. And my wife was really leaning toward, let's take a trip. Let's go somewhere that we haven't been, don't know anything about. And so we did. We took a trip, and she made me swear, enjoy the experience.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the schedule. Don't worry about the itinerary, because
Yeah.
I'm that way.
Yeah.
I'm structured.
Yeah.
The rest of the gang can't see it, but looking around the office, everything's got its place.
Yeah.
We've got times,
Yeah.
we've got schedules,
Yeah.
and it was probably one of the most enjoyable trips that I've ever been on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thoroughly enjoyed it. The family thoroughly enjoyed it. But then you come back to the hustle and bustle.
Yeah.
And I don't have 10 things on my
Yeah.
list, and I don't know very many folks that do. So how do you manage that from a time perspective?
Well, I'm very into disciplines and practices, daily disciplines, daily practices. I have a morning routine that's very structured. In my business, I know the metrics that have to be done every day. Everybody no matter your industry, you can look up and you can be in it 10, 20 years and you start thinking that everything matters equally. And the truth is, nothing could be further from the truth. There are actually very few things. I don't care what the job or role is, there's few things that you need to be focused on every day. So I've got 3 lists, and each and every one of these entities that I look at, I call it my sheet music. I look at it every day and I go, in that Muse Capital, I need to be talking to that person, I need to be doing these things. AG Real Estate, need to be doing these things. Bishop Realtor Group, those things. And so then I'm not so overwhelmed, and I don't chase every rabbit, and I don't worry about every fire. I've really just learned of what are the essentials. How can I live in my life and my business with a less but better mentality? Mm-hmm. Not more. I want to do less but better. I want to be able to enjoy the little things that I've been entrusted and not think that I have to be everything to everybody. That's a hard business lesson to learn.
Absolutely.
Because I made a living, quite honestly, I made a career out of saying yes. Mm-hmm. I've now learned that the next quantum leap that will happen in my life and business is learning how to say no. Mm-hmm. Because you can't do it all.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn how to keep all of that in its right, proper perspective. And that's hard when you've got boards that want you to be involved and people want you to go to the Cowboys game that Sunday. And it's really, you just have to learn how to clarify what in this season do I need to be doing? What really matters? What really counts? And so I look at, a list like that, and while it may overwhelm some people, my hope is that I can live a little bit of a balanced life. And if you do live a balanced life, you just have to know that not everything is going to be in balance at the same time.
Right.
There will be days where I'm all dad, period. Phones off, all dad. There will be some days where it's all, I got to go do this deal with Tanner, and we got to get that thing done. It doesn't mean that everything gets its equal thing each day. It just means that each day, as you interact with all of these different roles that you have, you really keep them in perspective.
So what does that morning routine look like?
It's, silence, stillness, and solitude.
Okay.
Is really the 3 words that kind of anchor me in the morning. I mean, I'm sure your inbox is on fire. My cell phone, 9 a.m., here it goes. So I have a reading that I do every morning. I have what I call is like a 20-minute sit. It's just kind of a period of reflection. And then, your standard breakfast, getting ready routine. Sure. But what it does is it allows me to enter my day really in a state of like rest, renewal, and peace, mm-hmm. versus hitting the ground and telling myself there's 1,000 things I have to do today. Yeah. You don't have 1,000 minutes. There's 1,440 minutes in every day. If you sleep 8 hours, now you have less than 1,000 minutes. So you actually can't do 1,000 things today. And so I'm very into that, just clarifying that, we all have the same amount of minutes. Warren Buffett has 1,440 mm-hmm. minutes. Tiger Woods, 1,440 minutes. How are you going to spend those? And I've found, the old Zig Ziglar phrase, people end up being wandering generalities instead of meaningful specifics.
Yeah.
And my most frustrated days are when I know I was a wandering generality. My most alive, best night of sleep days are when I knew I was a meaningful specific. Yeah. And I think that shift as a business owner has been huge for me. It's work every day to keep that aligned, keep that in focus. But I can say that mentality has really saved me over the last few years.
It's interesting you bring up Warren Buffett. I think one of the things that he said, and I think he's put it out there in multiple iterations in one way or the other, but being the Oracle of Omaha and all those financial look to him for guidance, he said at the end of the day it doesn't matter because that's earning money.
Right.
And there's one thing money cannot buy.
Time. Yeah.
Time.
Bingo.
It can extend health. It can do all these things partially, but the one thing it can't do is time.
Yeah. I was listening to CNBC a couple days ago, just driving around town, and they were interviewing Buffett. And I'll never forget, I was on Franklin Avenue, going under the overpass, and Roses is approaching on my left. I can remember being there when he said this. He said, the only things that keep me up at night are the things I've said yes to.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I was like, that's a good word.
That's insightful. That is
that's
very,
a good word.
very insightful.
You have to learn. Sometimes you got to learn that no. Especially when time is your greatest resource. Well,
and then in closing, we'll go to and currently in pursuit of more things to become.
Yeah. What does that mean? I just think we're all on this mysterious journey, and if all that is said of me one day is that he was a real estate broker, that's going to be a really shallow eulogy for me. Matter of fact, I hope really real estate isn't mentioned in that moment. So what does it mean to become things anew? I don't know, but I want to stay curious about what could be next for me, and bring everything that I've had so far, but also learn to become something that's a gift to the world and something that's new and different and fresh. I think we all want a life that's a little bit satisfying and a little bit fresh and a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think we want certitude, but if you get enough certitude, you realize I need a little surprise in my life. And so, if in search of things to become, I'm going to keep my nose buried in a lot of books and keep asking a lot of questions. And I think I know that at some point my questions become worth more to me than my answers. That's a fact. I can tell you that.
Absolutely. Well, I can tell you we sincerely appreciate you joining us today.
Yep. Thank you.
Really,
thank you guys for what y'all do.
No, we're glad to do it, and it's one of the things that makes this job and working for Alliance so enjoyable is the fact we get to spend time with guys like you.
Yeah.
And just the relationships that you guys bring to us and we bring to you, but we sincerely appreciate your insights. And once again, I appreciate it, Ashton, very much.
Hey, man, thank you. I know that we're all after trust in the local marketplace, and you've been a great guy for me to have on speed dial, and I'm super grateful for from needing to only get a little bit of money for a client into an account to you're getting 7-figure deals done. You've been there for me, so thanks for doing that.
You bet. We're glad to have you today. Appreciate it again.
You bet.